everyone and welcome. Today I am going to recommend some books to you, and I am going to do it in a format that is quite often used here on BookTube, which is if you like this book, then maybe give this other book a try because there are some similarities between them. Now, I do enjoy all of the books that I am going to mention, so even if you haven't read any of them, but what I do mention about them seems appealing to you, then definitely pick them up and you might enjoy them. I have 12 books in total to talk about, so 6 pairs of 2, and without further ado, I am going to start with the first one. So I didn't mention this, but I do think that most of you know all of these books will be fantasy books, so this is definitely recommendation, the fantasy edition. But the first pair that I have here is if you like Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, then I do think you will like The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang as well. Now, these two are quite different from one another as well, so I do think that I need to explain myself a little bit. So in both of these, you follow a main character that starts at the bottom and then becomes much more powerful than anyone, including themselves, thinks in the beginning. So in Mistborn, you follow Vin. Vin is a member of the Ska population, who are basically slaves. And then in The Poppy War, you follow Rin, and Rin is from a province that is definitely looked down upon in the capital, and when she goes to the capital, that's something that she definitely has to deal with as well. So a lot of people might say, oh, so it's basically the chosen one trope that is in both of these. But I think that's a lot more specific than that. Because when you look at the chosen one, it's not always something who has to work with all of those prejudices. For example, when you look at The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, you have the dragon. The dragon comes from a village, but in that village he is well respected, nothing is wrong there. Nobody looks down upon him, even when he goes to other towns, while this is definitely present here. And this is also something that the main character in both of these books and in this series needs to deal with, and there's definitely some mental trauma and some mental health issues for both of the main characters as well. So that's definitely something that I enjoyed. What you also have here is that you have a mentor that's not completely okay, and it's also a little bit special or peculiar, you could say, which is not always true in other books either. So that is also something that I enjoyed. I don't like when people are too perfect or when you have a mentor that doesn't have any problems themselves, and this is something that isn't true for both of these. So if that's an aspect that you like, you will also find that here. On the other hand, in Mistborn, you have a heist story, so you do have some action scenes, you also have some stealth scenes where people need to spy on others, etc. And that's also something that is present in The Poppy War as well. Although I do think that the main appeal between these two books that is quite similar is the main character, that I could definitely see some connections or some correlations between Vin and Rin. So if you liked Vin, then I think you will like Rin's story and Rin's coming of age story, and vice versa. However, I do feel that I need to say that The Poppy War is a grimdark book, and that isn't true for Mistborn. You do have some darker elements in Mistborn, especially the second and the third book, but The Poppy War is something completely different. It's very dark. There is a very explicit scene about sexual assault. Also, the mental health aspects go a little bit further than what you see in Mistborn. So if that's something that you have issues with or that you just can't deal with, then do know that that's present here. But everything else, I do see a lot of similarities. I also see some lore with the gods, and that with the main character you have to discover what's true and what isn't. That's also in both of these series. So I do think that there is a lot of overarching appeal between the two, but there are definitely also some differences as well. Next up, I have again 2 series that I think are quite similar, especially in tone, and those are The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski and the Winnowing series by Jen Williams, and then the first book being The Night Train. So I think that these two are very different from any other series that I've ever read. And I think that if prior to reading The Night Train, if you'd asked me a series similar to The Witcher, I couldn't really say any, because it's just so different in tone, it's different in plot, it's different for the characters than anything else, and the same can be said for the Winnowing Flame trilogy. So in both of these, I feel like if you go into them expecting a good plot, you will be disappointed, because the plot in itself isn't really that important, especially in The Witcher. The ending is a little bit of a letdown, and I do see a lot of people saying that. But then on the other hand, there are a lot of people who say, well, yeah, but that's not why I was reading this. I was reading it for the world building, for these monsters that are in these worlds, for the difficult political intrigue that is also there, the different cities and what's going on there. That's why I was reading this. And I think that that's definitely the most important part and the thing that will keep you hooked in this book as well. Where you have this war, which are called reigns. You don't really know why these are called reigns in the beginning, but you get to know this as that progresses. You have these artifacts that you find, or that they find, the characters in these books, and you want to know more about that. So the world building and what has happened in the past and getting to know what everything is and what it all means, that's what's the most important in these two books, more than the plot. I also think that if you like the characters of one of these two books, you will like the characters in the other one as well. In both, you have a band of people who go traveling with a clear goal, with a clear leader, and in both, the interactions between the characters is what can really keep you hooked to the story. And all of the characters are a little bit off. If you like Geralt, for instance, I do think that you will like, how is he called? Tormelin here as well. Or if you like Cahir, I feel like Cahir from The Witcher and Tormelin from this book are quite similar as well. So the characters, the world building, that's what's going to keep you hooked, that it's so different from anything else. If you want to have a good plot, then definitely The Witcher is going to be a little bit off with a lot of sidelines that aren't that important, that make it a little bit convoluted. And for this one, towards the end, the plot was definitely more clear. But to be honest, I couldn't care less. I was more invested in all of the different people and what their journey was than the overarching plot. So I feel if you want to have a strange fantasy experience and something else than what you might have been reading for a while now, then definitely check out these two. And if you have read one of these two and you've enjoyed it, then check out the other series as well, because I do think that there's a pretty high chance that if you like one, you will like the other as well. Next up, I have a grimdark recommendation, and that is if you like the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, then definitely check out The Grim Company by Luke Scull. Both are trilogies, and I must say I read this one first, and when I started reading The Blade itself, I saw so many similarities. This is definitely the one that I feel most confident about, because the main story is more or less similar, and a lot of the characters as well. Jezal from The Blade itself is basically the main character here. And that is what I often see as a critique for this book, is that the main character is unlikable. And yes, it's true, he is supposed to be annoying. He's basically Jezal, maybe even a little bit worse. But I didn't mind. I actually like Jezal from The Blade itself. And I think that he is a little bit more depth out in this one, of course, because he is the main character. And I did enjoy that. You also have the Northman, who is of course Logan Ninefingers in The Blade itself, and he has an entire book that is basically dedicated to his backstory, which is the second book, titled Sword of the North. That's my favorite book of the entire trilogy. You also have some Magi, the first of the Magi. You know, I am listening to the audiobook of the second book, Before They Are Hanged, and I cannot for the life of me remember how you say Magi. At least you have those characters in this one as well, but you don't really follow them. They are just around in this world. And you also have a Glokta type character, but he's actually a very good man, but he's often portrayed worse than he is. So in terms of characters, it's very similar. In terms of the story itself, there are also some similarities, but it's definitely different enough that you can read both and enjoy both. And I think that this is a criminally underrated series. So if you liked The Blade itself, if you liked anything by Joe Abercrombie, then please pick this one up, because it just deserves more love, and I'm quite certain that you will enjoy this one. So yeah, this is my third recommendation. Please pick it up. Next up, I have a standalone and a series. If you like Cersei by Madeline Miller, then I think there's a pretty good chance you would like The Bear and the Nightingale, which is the first book of the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. There are a lot of similarities between these two, but I think that the most important one is the feeling that you get when you are reading these books. Because both of these are definitely atmospheric, where the plot is not that important, the characters are not that important, you might not feel that connected to these characters even, but you feel like you are inside the story. and the whimsical read really helps with that. So both of these are very whimsical. If you like the writing style of one, you will like the writing style of the other as well. I'm quite sure of that. Of course, there are going to be some differences. Cersei is a standalone. The Winter Night trilogy is a trilogy, so more things are going to happen there. But Cersei is based on Greek mythology. The Winter Night trilogy is based on Russian folklore, so you do have some similarities there as well. That means that the magic is also going to be very similar. It's almost fairy tale-esque magic that you will find in both of these. As I said, the setting is of course going to be different, where I think that Cersei is maybe more of a summer read, while the Winter Night trilogy is more of a read that you want to read in winter, so you can definitely spread these out throughout the year. You also follow a female character. In Cersei you follow Cersei, in the Winter Night trilogy you follow Vasha. And I do think that Vasha is a little bit stronger than Cersei, but both fight against the current state of things and how people view women. In the Winter Night trilogy you have Christianity, and you have especially one priest who feels like women should be a certain way, but in general society in this book feels like women should be a certain way, and Vasha does not fit that profile, and she does really fight against that. And in Cersei you have a similar feeling, and you have the similar criticism of how the gods view nymphs and how they treat women in general. So I do think that, again, these two books are quite similar in those aspects, and that if you like one, you will like the other. And on the other hand, if you dislike one, I do think that there's a pretty good chance that you will dislike the other as well. Then I have another grimdark recommendation, and that is if you like Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan, then I do think you would enjoy The Chronicle of the Unhung Throne by Brian Staveley as well. So both of these are trilogies. I have read this entire trilogy, but I haven't read anything besides Bloodsong in this series by Anthony Ryan. However, I do think that you can read Bloodsong as a standalone perfectly and be fine and have closure at the end of this book. Where the similarities between these two lie is in Valen. In both of these series you have a main character called Valen. In Bloodsong you only follow Valen. In the Chronicle of the Unhung Throne series, it's one of the three characters that you follow, and both of these go to a school at a young age to become this elite warrior. And you follow them in this school, especially in The Emperor's Blades, in the first book in the Chronicle of the Unhung Throne. That plays a very big role in this setup. In the second and the third book, maybe a little bit less, but these two are definitely very similar. And these schools are very brutal. So if you like a school-like setting in your fantasy books, where it's definitely very hard, children actually die from going to the school in both of these series, then that's something that is very similar between the two. Also, in general, just the atmosphere and the main threat in both series is quite similar. So if that's something that you've liked in Bloodsong, then I do think that you should pick up The Chronicle of the Unhung Throne as well. Because I hear a lot of people rave about Bloodsong and about the character Valen. And besides the names, they have more in common. Both of these harden throughout the story because of everything that they have faced and everything that happened to them, which is again very similar. Both of them lose certain people in their lives, and that leaves a permanent scar, which is also true for both of these books. The world building is quite similar, or at least I think if you like the world in one of them, you will enjoy the world in the other one as well. But there are a lot of differences, of course. I think that in the Chronicle of the Unhung Throne, the religion is more important and there is a more elaborate world building and lore than in Bloodsong. But of course, I have only read Bloodsong, so it could be that that is further expanded in the second and the third book. But I do think that a lot of people rave about Bloodsong, but then you should definitely pick up The Chronicle of the Unhung Throne by Brian Staveley as well, because especially his writing style is really amazing. And then for my last recommendation, I have again two books, and that is if you like The Song of the Shattered Sand series by Bradley P. Bolio, then I do think that you would like this new release, which is Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long as well. So this is a standalone. There is going to come a companion novel that follows the same main character, and it's actually coming out in January 2022, but this one only came out 2 months ago, so it's definitely a new release. And this is the first book in a 6-book long series. The 6th book is coming out this year as well. So of course there are going to be some differences. This one is very strong in terms of political intrigue. This one doesn't really have any political intrigue. This one is based in a desert-like city. This one is heavily influenced by Vikings and Viking mythology, even though it is set in a completely different world. So it's not set in our world, these aren't Vikings, but that's definitely the feeling that you're going to get. It's also some Roman-like people that are here as well. So in terms of world building, in terms of the setting, these are very different. However, if you like a strong female warrior-like character, then this is definitely here in both of these, and this is going to be your main character. In Hall of Smoke, you follow Hessa. Hessa is a warrior priestess, something happens to her tribe, and she has a very clear goal that she needs to get to in order to save herself, but also her loved ones. There is a very clear reason why she needs to do this. And in order to succeed, she needs to work with the gods, she needs to find out where the gods are lying to her, and try to use that in her advantage. In this book, you follow Shada. Shada is a pit fighter, and she also has a very clear goal, and she also has a very clear reason why she needs to do that, that is connected to her loved ones. In order to do that, she needs to find out about the history of Sharakai, which is this desert-like city, and she needs to find out about the gods and where the gods are lying in their lore and in their history. So that's definitely a very, very important similarity between these two. And that's basically why I think if you like this, if you like the main character, if you like that strong warrior-like character, and if you like that setting of a very clear quest and what they need to do, and basically the tricks of the gods and trying to figure out that mystery, that's what you're going to have in both of these. If you liked the political intrigue in 12 Kings of Sharakai, then you're not going to find that here. Then please pick up another book if that's why you are going to read this. If you like the Viking-like setting in this one, then again, you're not going to find that here. So it has clear differences, but it also has similarities, and if what I just talked about seems interesting to you, then I do think that you will like the other one as well, even though this is a much faster read and less dense, I feel. It's easier to follow because, again, you only have one character that you need to follow and not as much political intrigue. But definitely give this one a try if this one was interesting for you. So those were all of the books that I wanted to recommend to you. I hope there is something that piqued your interest. Have you read any of these and do you now want to pick up another one? Or are there just some that piqued your interest and that you want to try now? Then please let me know in the comments down below. And if you maybe have one that fits with these recommendations as well, say like, well, but if you've read Mistborn, then maybe this other book is also perfect for you, then please let me know, because as I said, I enjoyed all of these, so I am looking for recommendations as well. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and see you next time. Bye!